order. Orderlies, I order Honorable Rosa Boyu and Millie Odhiambo will leave the chamber.
All right, and that was the situation this afternoon at the National Assembly. Of course, so much drama, the chaos that we witnessed there. Of course, some of our panelists here in studio were there. They are members of the National Assembly, Robert Mboi from Kathiani constituency, but also the Deputy Minority Leader of the National Assembly. Silvana Sosoro is the Member of Parliament for South Mugirango, but also the Majority Whip at the National Assembly, Senator Edwin Sifuna, Senator Nairobi, but also the Deputy Minority Whip at the Senate, and Senator Veronica Maina, nominated Senator from the UDA party. Let's begin with you, the members of the National Assembly, because we see Speaker Wetangula chasing out 7 members of the National Assembly, and the genesis of that is the leadership wrangle around Sabina Chege. The Azimio side does not want her. Actually, I've already identified one other member, that is Honorable Mwenje, to be the new leader. What do you put this at? Because the Speaker is saying that he agrees that you follow the procedure, but there's a court order. Honorable Mbui.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Sam, first and foremost, I think it's important to understand that we are in a multi-party democracy, and as such, we must respect the rules of the game. When this regime came to power, they told us that they want a very strong opposition, but everything they have done shows us that they are hell-bent on ensuring that there is no opposition in this country. Now, the position of Deputy Whip, which is a position of a preserve of the Azimio coalition, it is our responsibility, it is our decision, it is our choice who is our whip. And for someone to purport to hang on to that position, I think, in my opinion, it's really a totally immoral situation. Because for me, I think when one goes to take up an office, right, you must be able to serve in that office. The honorable member has not been able to serve in that office because she crossed the floor and went to the team, which is Kenya Kwanza. Mm-hmm. So how can she purport then to continue holding an office in the Azimio coalition of whipping members? And the whip is the one who puts people together. The deputy whip here will tell you, he's the one who has to call people and tell them, this is our position on this particular agenda on the floor. Right. So if somebody is not with us, then why would they continue holding on to office? Now, the reality is that we made a decision a while back, more than 2 months ago, and we communicated our decision to the Speaker of the National Assembly. He has dilly-dallied with that decision, and towards the tail end of the last session, he came and told us that he's giving us 1 month because he said, you know, we had not given him a replacement. And we had only given a name, we had only removed that particular person from office. So when we give him a name, suddenly they've gone and procured some orders from some court. And because we do not understand, he didn't give us the order. We were not party to the proceedings. So we do not understand how we get involved, because the decision it's very clear in the standing orders what we are supposed to do. Okay. We've done it. So I think they're playing games with us.
Have you now received the order?
No, we have not seen it.
Okay, Honorable Soro, I don't know whether you were at the House at that time. I think you were, but in such a situation, the Speaker is saying that there's a court order, the members affected have not received it. What is the right thing to do according to the standing orders of the House?
You've actually well put it, according to the standing order. The standing order provides that the Speaker, chairs the chamber sessions, and his word is final. So whenever he makes a ruling, there is no appellant position at that point. There is no appellant section. You can't go beyond that. It is just the Speaker. On or about, I think, 2 months or thereabout, and I think Honorable Bui can correct me, they indeed, of course, communicated to the Speaker and told him that they wanted to remove Honorable Sabina Chege. But the standing order does not provide for the removal of one in leadership. It provides for the replacement. So when you remove, you replace. And replacement ideally means that there shouldn't be a vacuum in leadership, in the House leadership. So that is what the standing order provides. So he communicated, he said, I've received your letter, but you said, we have removed Sabina Chege. You haven't brought a replacement. And that is what the standing order says. And he gave them 30 days to bring a replacement. And of course, indeed, they brought, as he has said. But then, really, if the Speaker said there is a court order. He is the speaker. You know, maybe, of course, the court order was served upon him, not them. And orders are given sometimes ex parte, and really one can't say we are not served. Service to such effect will come later. And what, of course, will happen is that it's just a process. What happened in the House is a display of process. The Azimio coalition lacks patience, a little bit of some patience for the process to proceed rightly. Because
what patience is required at this point?
Because the Speaker said, if there is a court order that have been served, we are finding a way to get enjoined in such, because the court order is to the effect on the standing order, on a particular standing order. Right. It is not to the effect of Sabina Chege in particular. They say he's also consulting further to have himself, to have Parliament enjoined in such. And then, of course, when the matter comes into conclusion, then Sabina will...
But really. Honorable Soro, you're the majority whip today
of
the Kenya Kwanza Alliance within the House. So if you switched allegiance and went to a different coalition, it doesn't have to be Azimio, and your party disowns you and says that we don't want him to be our whip anymore, what authority would you have to continue being a whip?
Of course, if I'm not really intending to do that, but if that happens, then due process is followed. If the due process is followed, and that is what I'm talking about, there ought to be a process. And the process was to replace. And there is a court order, an existing court order. I mean, really, what do you want a speaker to do?
No, I get that. I'm asking
so the moral authority as an individual.
Right.
Ideally, of course, there are grounds that make one move. And I think what Sabina is communicating is that the underlying issues within, there is an agreement within the Azimio coalition, Jubilee, ODM and such. He's saying these are internal affairs. I may have fallen out with you over something that can be sorted. They do not want to call her. In fact, in my opinion, her persistence, to hold this position is possibly, her way of communication to the Azimio leadership that, hey, I'm still with you guys, please communicate with me. But they do not want to do that.
Sorry, do you actually believe that?
Sorry?
Do you actually believe that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do believe that.
Senator Sifuna, once upon a time, Fatma Dulo, the senator of Isiolo, was the minority whip. And currency of what happened, you're now the deputy minority whip. How do you draw parallels in the processes of the Senate and now at the National Assembly?
Absolutely, Sam. It's the same games that are being played that were played in the Senate. There are very many things that are curious about this particular situation. First of all, Sam, as a deputy minority whip in the Senate, I do understand that I serve at the pleasure of my delegation. That in fact, if tomorrow members of my delegation say that Sifuna is ineffective as a whip, he's no longer able to marshal troops for important votes, and that is the role of a whip. If you cannot whip members, for instance, if when I call you, you cannot even pick my call, there's no way I can be your whip. So right now, I will disclose to you that as a deputy whip in the Senate, I am unable to whip the members of Jubilee because they are being whipped from elsewhere. They attend parliamentary groups at State House, not the ones that I call. If there is no quorum in a committee, the committee chair cannot call me to ask me where Fatuma Dulo is, because if I call her for a fact, she will not pick my calls. I cannot call Senator Haji and tell him, I require you to vote this way on a matter on the floor of the House. What that tells you, my brother, is that if I cannot whip you, then you are not supposed to be a member of my delegation, and we have actually de-whipped them as members of the minority in the Senate. Right. And it is the same thing. If you do not enjoy the confidence of members, then you cannot whip them and you cannot lead them. What happened in the Senate is exactly what is going on in the National Assembly. But what is curious, at least in Dulo's case, they had the fortitude or the foresight to actually go to the proper court. The proper forum for resolution of disputes between members and the political parties is a political parties disputes tribunal. In this particular case, there are very many curious instances, Sam, and I want to take you through them. The first one is the forum in which this dispute has been taken. You do not go to the High Court in Kiambu, a constitutional court, to resolve a dispute involving a political party. If he's saying that Sabina's gripe is with the political party or the political coalition, the right forum is the political parties disputes tribunal, after exhausting the internal dispute resolution mechanism within the Azimio coalition, which exists. And it is not for them to call, as a member of a party, as a member of a coalition, I can declare a dispute And then it becomes the responsibility of the coalition to call the IDRM. But if you have not declared a dispute, then there is no way. Number two, Sam, is the parties to that particular petition. If what I had Speaker Wetangula reading, it's quite curious. The petitioners are people who have nothing to do with Azimio. I have heard about them for the first time. And curiously, even when the order is stopping or suspending the decision of the minority coalition, the minority coalition itself is not a named party. You heard Speaker Wetangula advising the minority coalition in the National Assembly to apply to be enjoined. An order that is affecting a decision that I have taken, and yet I'm not even a party to that particular suit. Right. Thirdly, what is even more curious about this particular court order is that the manner in which it was communicated. You know, if you have a court order affecting me, you're supposed to serve me. Right. If Robert Mbui, our deputy whip, has not seen that order, Wetangula has not shown the minority party that whip, that order, then it is a suspicious order. And lastly, Sam, to save time, this particular case is supposed to be challenging standing orders of the National Assembly. The standing orders, current standing orders of the National Assembly, were passed by the last parliament at the tail end of the parliament, and he will tell you that is a tradition of parliament. You pass the standing orders, you leave the new house to come. It has been almost a year. So a court exercising properly its mind, its judicious mind to an application such as that, would be hesitant to issue a court order when you are challenging something that was passed almost a year ago. Because for us in the Senate, immediately there were changes to the standing orders to bring these cabinet secretaries to the floor of the House. We went to court immediately that same week, so that there is a doctrine called laches. If you want to pursue a certain right, the court will ask you not to sleep on your rights for too long, and then pretend to come at the tail end of the process when matters have already proceeded. So all these things are very, very curious. It reeks of forum shopping, that people have identified a certain court that can issue favorable orders, even in the face of all these facts that I'm telling you. It reeks of forum shopping, and it reeks of interference by some unseen hand. I am sure that my colleagues here will speak to it, but it is wrong on all fronts, because the standing orders of the National Assembly mirror the standing orders of the Senate. The Speaker has no role in determining the leadership of the minority side.
So in a short answer, do you think that court order should be binding on the Speaker?
I don't think there is a court order, first of all, because I've not seen it. It just doesn't make any sense to me until I see it. And by the way, Sam, in the last administration, you remember there was a specter of fake court orders. That, in fact, the judiciary had to develop a court order that even has a code that you can actually verify with the registrar that this is a real code. Because I don't believe that a person sitting in a position of a high court judge, knowing that there's a forum for resolution of disputes involving political parties and their members, would issue such an order.
Okay, I hear you, Senator. Now, Senator Veronica, you've been a Secretary General of two ruling parties. Well, I think when Jubilee became a ruling party, you had left. But you were the Secretary General of the Jubilee Party. Recently, you left the seat of Secretary General UDA. Are you concerned that after every election, you have people shifting allegiances, going into different alliances, and you always see this kind of drama, people shifting their allegiance, but then causing a lot of chaos like what we witnessed this afternoon?
I think I would not be surprised in the Kenyan situation to see people shifting allegiances, because they have done that many, many times before and in different tenures of different governments. My bigger concern is the responses that we are receiving in the studio today. Because what, first of all, Senator Sifuna is responding to is based on presumptions, because he has presumed, he suspects that there is no court order. I think it's highly unlikely that a Speaker of Honorable Wetangula standing would actually cite a court order which goes into the Hansard as a record when that court order is not existing. Now, whether that court order is emanating from the correct court or the wrong court, where any person will be feeling as though they would challenge the jurisdiction of that court, is not something that the Speaker has capacity to determine, because once a Speaker or any person is served with a court order, they are bound to obey and comply with the orders of the court, and that's what then amounts to rule of law. And everyone is bound. Both the Speaker is bound by that court order, ODM, you'll be bound by that court order. The coalition, you'll be bound by that court order. And if anyone is dissatisfied with what the court has issued, then they need to go to the next level and challenge that court order, come back with another order that removes or stays that order or injuncts the speaker from taking such action. My concern is that the questions that are being answered, even through the overthrowing of Sabina from that seat, is a bigger question of who is in control of Jubilee Party, because Jubilee Party is the one that was assigned that seat of deputy whip. And if you look at the rules, even from the registrar's record, the function that is being led by Honorable Chege and Sabina are the ones who are legally entitled to manage the affairs of Jubilee Party. So the bigger question that
is in dispute, Senator.
According to the orders that have been issued by court, unless there were some which were issued yesterday and today, and you can bring them to my...
There are no orders from any court or even tribunal. It is only the Office of Registrar of Political Parties that has given.
And I hope you do understand,
direction.
Sam, the effect and the impact of the decision made by Registrar of Political Parties. That he's
that's what I'm saying. That Office decision of the Registrar is in dispute.
There are lots of court orders, by the way, Sam, and you need to look into the court processes that have gone around the Jubilee coalition and determination of leadership. And the fact that the registrar has determined that the faction with Chege and Honorable Sabina is a faction that is having the legitimate officials of the party. They are the ones to make a legitimate decision on behalf of the Jubilee Party. Unless the court has reversed that or recognized the other faction, then you know for a fact that any resolution made by Jubilee will impact Jubilee and will impact their positioning within the Azimio coalition. Unless, of course, if Azimio wants to come here and say, by the way, Jubilee is no longer a constituent party of the coalition. Azimio coalition. So I think what we are having here is my colleague being a beneficiary of such a process in Senate. I even wonder whether you should be asking him these questions, because, you know, after having dethroned, he was a beneficiary. I mean, he got a position which he did not have before. So he's happily smiling.
Or it's a role that you need to serve? I mean, whipping members.
Correct. It's a role.
Yes, it is, but it's a privilege. It's not everyone who has that position. He has that position. So I think for me there is a bigger issue, and my worry is that once the Speaker has rendered a decision in the House, the reaction of the members shouldn't be what we saw on the floor of the House.
I hear you.
And what we should concentrate on, once a Speaker, because we are a nation that is running under the rule of law and constitutionalism, once a decision is rendered by the Speaker, how then should we as members of that House behave from that point when the Speaker renders that judgment? Should it be respected, or is it right for members to now walk throwing stones everywhere or throwing water, feasting one another? I think the bigger issue is the reaction of the members, and that's what we should be looking at.
All right, I want us to transition, but Honorable Mboi, so then what do you do next? Because a decision has been rendered, you haven't received an order, but apparently there's a court order. So what will you do?
Sam, before I say that, you know, Veronica here has talked about the rule of law, constitutionality, and, you know, how we have to have legal discipline. But then, you see, at the heart of this whole conversation is the Political Parties Act, which was enacted by the National Assembly and is in law. And Section 14 of the Political Parties Act, Part 5, D and E, talks about resignation from a political party. And any member who will be deemed to have resigned from their party, if they go out there and espouse the ideologies of another political party, in which case that is what this particular member has done, and other members also. If they themselves do not have the decency and they do not want to follow the rule of law and resign from their offices, then why do you put the coalition to be the one that answers for them? But going forward, I think we will make sure that we will not allow the dictatorship that we are seeing from the majority side. We will not allow them to cower us. We will not allow them to decide for us who our leaders are. And we will make sure that we will stand our ground. Because at the end of the day, you know, Sam, if people want to tell you to be disciplined and they themselves are not disciplined, then I mean, why do we want to be gentlemen and we are dealing with people who want to bring a brawl to the house? For us, we will not allow them to dictate to us. We will insist on standing our ground, and we will insist it's going to be business as usual. the way they saw today until they allow us to have our way. Because you see, the majority, we do not interfere with their leadership.
Okay,
Sam, let me tell you, even when it comes to whipping our own members,
yes,
it goes beyond this. Even for us to whip our own members, they have tried to block us. The majority interferes even with us whipping our own members. We want to remove a member from one committee to another, the majority leader and his team, they will gang up and they will refuse. Okay. We cannot run the house that way.
You've made quite a number of allegations here, but we need to take a break. You've talked about discipline, which is what you have to observe. We take a short break, but when we come back, we'll also be speaking about the future of the finance bill. We understand that currently the Finance and Planning Committee is holding a retreat in Naivasha, including the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary and the Commissioner General of the KRA to go through the provisions, but also the feedback that has come from people. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment.